Hey guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you a retro unboxing plus on-feet video of the Nike Mercurial Vapor Superfly 2. Now, as you can see, it comes in its own special gray Mercurial box. You can see it says Mercurial at the top. Normally there would be a sleeve on the box, but I've already removed that for the sake of the video. Now, as far as extras that they would have included on the inside with a general release colorway, you got two individual microfiber shoe bags. So one bag for each shoe. You can see it says Mercurial on the one side in black, and then it has a black Nike swoosh on the back side of the bag. Kind of an interesting concept, and it was a little bit unusual to carry two shoes in two individual bags. I personally never did it, but I saw people that did. I thought they looked a little bit goofy, but that's just what Nike was doing at the time. So other than that, all you're going to find inside the box are the shoes themselves. And here is a look at the Superfly 2s in the launch colorway, which was Violet Pop Purple, a bright orange Nike swoosh as an accent color, and then of course your navy blue accent here going across the instep. Now this is, like I said, the launch color, originally released in 2010, but this is part of a dual unboxing, so I'll move that over to the side for just a second and take a look at the second pair of Superfly 2s that I recently acquired. Now this is the 2010 World Cup colorway of the Superfly 2. It did not include two individual boot bags. Instead, you got this lunchbox style boot bag, I guess you could say. It's black in color with your orange Nike swoosh here on the front, ventilated on both sides, so you could have the shoes in the bag while still allowing them to air out to a certain extent. Unfortunately, I do not have the original box here. I mean, it actually was a pretty cool box. It features that same kind of warning graphic that you're going to find on the shoes, but I don't have it. But I do have, like I said, the bag as well as the shoes, which are probably the two most important parts at the end of the day, and all they would have included inside the box anyways. So I'll get the shoes out of this bag and give you guys a look at those. So here is a look at the 2010 World Cup colorway. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this particular shoe. Probably one of the best looking Mercurial designs ever to be released, at least in my opinion. Features a predominantly silver / purple upper. It's kind of an interesting shade of silver. And it definitely does have kind of a purplish tinge to it, at least in my opinion. You have your black Nike swoosh on both the outside and inside of the shoe, and then of course the bright orange accents throughout, making up this graphic that goes across the midfoot and all the way through the heel, as well as across the stud plate on the carbon fiber sole plate, giving the World Cup colorway a little bit more of a unique look in comparison to the standard ones that featured a mostly clear stud plate, as you guys can see. So here is a look at the two colorway variations of the Superfly 2 that I currently own. The only other colorway variation that there would have been, as far as graphics go anyways, would have been the Safari Print CR7 edition, which featured black and white safari print with a bright orange Nike swoosh similar to what you're going to find on this Violet Pop colorway. Very, very unique looking shoe. One of my personal favorites of all time. I'm still looking for those. If I ever do get my hands on a pair, I definitely will make an unboxing video for you guys. Now, as far as the Superfly 2 goes, just to give you guys a little bit of a history lesson, even though it isn't that old, it originally released, as mentioned before, in 2010. So it's coming up on being 4 years old. Obviously, the Superfly series has been discontinued since then. There's really no word of its return. At least that is confirmed information. There's lots of people kind of putting rumors out there that it's returning in 2015 or 2016 or whatever it may be, but that really doesn't mean all that much to me. It's way too soon to call any kind of Superfly predecessor, I should say, simply because we haven't seen anything. We haven't seen pros wearing any kind of blackouts or anything like that. So as far as we know, the Superfly series is discontinued until further notice. And for me anyways, the Superfly 2 is really the pinnacle of what the Superfly series ever achieved, in that it was really the only major redesign that they ever did to the series, since the Superfly 3 was more or less more of the same coming from the Superfly 2. All they really added was a separate lace hole, and they changed the shape of the shoe ever so slightly in the toe box area. But other than that, it was pretty much identical to the Superfly 2. And like I said, this is really the only major change they made to the series. Now, the Superfly 2 was such a cool shoe in that it kind of threw all the technologies that Nike had at the time in one single shoe. And that got people excited, but of course it came at a premium price. These guys retailed anywhere from $300, $350 to even over $400 depending on where in the world you were buying them. Retail prices tend to vary all over the world, making this one of the most, if not the most expensive shoe of all time that wasn't limited edition. It was a general release shoe that, like I said, it was just very, very expensive, but believe it or not, people still did buy them at that $400 price tag, which is hard to believe, but it happened. So as far as the Superfly 2 goes, while there were a lot of upsides to having all of this technology on the boot, there definitely were some downsides to the Superfly 2. And the Superfly 2, I think, is responsible for a lot of trends that happened in and around 2010, 2011 kind of era of soccer shoes. The first thing is the hot water trick. A lot of people saw Cristiano Ronaldo soaking his Superfly 2s in a bucket of hot water prior to games and practices in order to soften them up and make them more comfortable for him to wear, simply because this was such a stiff shoe, easily the stiffest shoe ever made, at least any of the stiffest shoes that I've ever worn, and it was very difficult to break in. It took a lot of time, and it wasn't really suitable for many foot types at all. You really had to have the perfect foot for the Superfly series in order to ever achieve a comfortable fit, and I really wasn't one of those people. I think in the Superfly 2 and the Superfly 3, I definitely could wear it after a lot of break-in time, and even then it was only what I would consider to be moderately comfortable, whereas the Superfly 1 was just a shoe that I could not wear. It didn't work with my foot at all, and was uncomfortable all the time, no matter how much I broke it in and how much I softened it up. Now, as far as the Superfly 2 itself goes, what made it so uncomfortable is, one, it's incredibly stiff for two reasons. One, all the flywire in the upper made for a lot of stiffness. It was thicker in thickness of the upper anyways. It's Teijin synthetic, but it was thicker than the general release versions of the Vapor. And then, of course, you have that carbon fiber sole plate, which also adds a decent amount of stiffness to the shoe, both in the forefoot as well as in the midfoot, making for, like I said, kind of an awkward kind of feel to the shoe. It was very tight in the midfoot and forefoot, especially if you did have slightly wider feet. And even if you did have the correct fit, because it was so stiff, especially at first, you would have issues with your heel sliding up and down in the back, just because your foot wasn't flexing with the shoe, which was a little bit of an issue and why it caused so many issues with discomfort. Now, as far as the technologies on this shoe, what made it really great when it comes to performance, if you were able to achieve that perfect fit, is all the flywire going across the upper. Now, you can see that it's mapped a lot differently from that original Superfly 1, which I do have a retro unboxing video of, by the way. If you want to check that out, I will leave an annotation on screen. And you can see that unlike the Superfly 1, where it was more of a generic layout of the flywire, they placed a lot more flywire, and they really emphasized on putting support where you needed it most. So you can see that there's a lot more flywire kind of closer together here on either side of the forefoot, which is the main push-off area where you're going to be making hard lateral cuts, and a lot less flywire here going through the midfoot, where it's there more so just to hold your foot in place and not so much necessary to have a really tight squeeze in order to achieve that comfortable fit. Now, you can see that there is some flywire going through the heel as well. I'm not sure how much that has to do with anything, and the whole issue with the boot ripping was not an issue with the Superfly 2. In fact, I would say that this is one of the most durable cleats ever made, just because of how stiff and how solidly built it is, even though it is a little bit on the lighter side. But in comparison to a modern Mercurial, I wouldn't necessarily call this all that light, which you will see a little bit later in the weigh-in portion of this video. Of course, like all Mercurials, it does feature that central lacing system. You have a thin Teijin synthetic tongue with a bit of a memory foam insert here. It's from like here to here on there. It's very, very thin, but it does help to prevent any kind of lace bite on the shoe, which is not really your main concern. Everything else was hurting beside the laces when you were actually wearing these guys. Has that low cut in the heel, and you guys can see on the inside of the heel liner, it's a synthetic leather material, but it actually has these little textured dots there to allow for a little bit better grip between the shoe and, of course, the back of your heel. But in all honesty, it really didn't do all that much, at least in my opinion. There were still too many people having heel slippage issues to really justify that it was doing anything. Now, the insoles were fully removable. I've already removed one here. This is from the Violet Pop colorway. You can see it says Mercurial Vapor Superfly right there. Mesh liner on top, perforations all throughout. And you can see that the perforations cut off right here on the medial side of the forefoot. That's because that's where the two scent studs are, which I'll talk about in just a second. You can see there's these two little nubs there to fill in the gaps or the little holes on the inside of the shoe where the scent studs are. And then, of course, you have perforations going throughout the entire foam insole, sorry. So move that out of the way, and we'll take a look at the outsole itself. So obviously you do have that carbon fiber sole plate as a base. I think for the most part, Nike really resolved the issue with the sole plates cracking like they had on the Vapor SL, sorry, as well as the Superfly 1. So the Superfly 2 and 3 were pretty reliable in terms of the sole plates being pretty solid and not cracking on you. Now, it has been 3 or 4 years almost, like I said, since this shoe has been in production, so it's pretty safe to say that this carbon fiber might become a little bit brittle. It can be an issue with a lot of composite hockey sticks, so I don't see why it wouldn't be an issue in a soccer shoe, especially considering that you're going to be putting a lot of stress on the sole plate. So for the most part, would I say that this is still a wearable shoe for today's game? I think you could probably get away with it, but I would be wary of the sole plate cracking, and if it did crack, it wouldn't surprise me just because it has been sitting around and carbon fiber does tend to dry out over time. Now, as far as the stud pattern itself goes, this is, of course, the firm ground stud pattern, which was the only version of the shoe offered to the public. Obviously, pros did have access to 6-stud soft ground stud patterns, even some mixed soles, but for what the public could buy, you could only buy firm ground with these 2 cent studs, which is really one of the new technologies introduced for the Superfly 2, and one of those technologies that really didn't catch on with the pros. A lot of the pros were just getting their standard Mercurial sole plates and stud patterns put on the shoe in kind of as opposed to, these 2 cent studs on there, which I really didn't understand because from my experience with the 2 cent studs, they actually do work really, really good. Now, the idea behind the cent stud is you have this little middle part, or this conical stud through the middle, that is designed to come out or go in a couple of millimeters depending on the hardness or the softness of the playing surface that you're on. So when you apply pressure to the bottom of the shoe and you step into the ground, if it's really, really soft, it's supposed to allow the stud to come out of the shoe a couple of millimeters more to allow for better grip. And if you step down and the ground's really hard, it's supposed to retract a couple millimeters to allow for, again, better grip as well as a little bit better stability. And from my own personal playing experiences with this particular stud pattern, these 2 cent studs really seem to work. It's not something that I can push in and move with my finger. It really requires a lot of effort to actually move and a lot of force to actually move these 2 cent studs. And I'm not sure entirely how it works. To me, it looks like it's some kind of pressure-based hydraulic, if you want to call it that. I'm not sure if that's the correct technical term, but that's how I'm personally going to explain it. But basically, from what I could feel, it did work pretty well. And wearing a firm ground stud pattern like this one on even soft natural grass playing surfaces, I found myself having a hard time slipping. It really did grip into the ground really well. And really the only reason why I can attribute that traction or the really good traction to this particular shoe, it has to be the cent studs. That's really the only reason why I think it would perform better than any other Mercurial stud pattern that I've personally ever used. So you do have your other bladed studs here, pretty standard on the outside there. You do have your triangular cutouts in the studs as well, which at the time was still a very, very cool feature in soccer shoes. I really liked the cutouts in the studs. And of course you have the cutouts in the 4 back bladed studs as well, which obviously they ditched. No, they still have actually the holes in the studs on the heel studs of the Vapor 9s anyways. But for the most part, I think the holes in the studs really doesn't do all that much in terms of performance and even shedding weight. It's more there just for looks. And I definitely think it is a cool looking feature on any soccer shoe. But that's pretty much it as far as all the technical specifications go. Definitely a technology packed shoe, if you want to call it that. And move on next to a quick weigh-in so you can see how lightweight these guys are. For the most part, I really don't think that Nike pushed the overall weight feature on the Superfly 2. I think people assumed it was light, and it is a light shoe, but it wasn't as light as what you could get at the time, especially considering 2010, we saw the release of the original F50 Adizero, which really pushed the boundaries for how light a soccer shoe could be and how light soccer shoes have become over the last couple of years. Now, I'm going to weigh this pair for you today in real time. Keep in mind that this is a brand new pair in a size 9 US, and again, this shoe doesn't feel what I would consider to be overwhelmingly lightweight, either in hand or on feet. So I'm going to throw it on the scale, and you can see that these guys weigh in at 8.25 ounces. And I think for the most part, a lot of people tend to hold the bigger brands like Nike and Adidas a little bit more strictly when it comes to the weight of their high-end lightweight soccer shoes. People almost expect them now to be around 6 to 7 ounces. So to be at 8.25 ounces for a shoe that costs $400, that may seem a little bit excessive, but like I said, the Superfly 2, to be fair, was a very durable shoe, and should you have the proper fit, it did provide a very good one-to-one feel, which did make for a lighter soccer shoe playing experience. So that's pretty much it as far as the weigh-in portion of this video goes. And move on to a quick on feet so you can get a better idea as to how these shoes fit and what the sizing is like. Alright, here's a look at the Superfly 2s on feet. And my general first impressions of how these things feel from right out of the box is they are incredibly stiff, very uncomfortable, and just something that I would not want to wear personally. I think that anybody who tries on the Superfly 2 brand new from right out of the box and it fits them properly and they say it fits comfortably, as far as I'm concerned, they are lying to you, because this shoe is shockingly stiff and doesn't feel good at all from right out of the box. There's really nothing positive that I have to say about it at this point in time. Like I said, once you break it in and it softens up, which does take a very, very long time and will cause some issues with blisters, there's no doubt about that. It can be a somewhat comfortable shoe, but from right out of the box, the feeling is, to be completely honest with you guys, shockingly bad. Now, in terms of the overall fit of the shoe, it definitely fits good. The shape is really nice in my opinion. It's just too tight and too stiff in certain areas, and of course that would change after some break-in time, which is really what I want to stress here. I don't want to say this is a bad shoe because I don't think it is. It just really isn't good from right out of the box. Now, it does have a more narrow cut pretty much through the midfoot as well as in the forefoot area. It's definitely a lot tighter. Basically all the areas where you're going to have that fly wire in the upper is where it feels extremely rigid, and even in the toe box and forefoot area, it is definitely a lot boxier than what you're going to find on some of the more current Mercurial models, but for the most part it still has that nice high quality fit, and the toe box will drop and soften up a little bit, like I said, after some break-in time. Now, in terms of sizing, I'm wearing the purple pair because they are size 9 US, whereas the 2010 World's Cup colorway is a 9.5, so these ones fit me a little bit better. And like I said, it is my usual size 9 US, and I would say the fit and the length is pretty much perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair of these, you find a pair on eBay or whatever it may be, although beware of fakes if you do go on eBay, I would definitely recommend going true to size for the best possible fit. So that's pretty much it as far as the on-feet portion of this video goes, and I'll leave you to my final thoughts. Alright guys, that's it for my retro unboxing of the Nike Mercurial Vapor Superfly 2. Like I said, I've been getting a lot of requests for this shoe, so you guys finally have this video now. Be sure to leave a suggestion down below for any other retro unboxings that you would like to see. And of course, if you do enjoy the retro unboxing series, be sure to support this video with a like. If you guys would like to see some higher quality images of either the World Cup colorway or even the Violet Pop colorway, I will have some images on the review page of my website, which you can find linked down below in the description, so be sure to go ahead and check that out. And I'll leave some annotations on screen to other retro unboxings that I've done in the past, including a retro unboxing plus on-feet video of a sample pair of pre-release Superfly 1. So go ahead and check that out. Again, I'll leave several annotations on screen. Other than that, guys, subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest soccer gear. You can find all of my social media information down below in the description. And other than that, hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.